Ranjit Pawar, AVP Business Head, Legal Software Solutions from Thomson Reuters. He has worked for 8 years with Thomson Reuters across various businesses, including innovation programs, mobile products, commodity markets, and legal businesses. He is currently responsible for expanding legal software footprint in South Asia. Working closely with leading Indian law firms, corporate counsel, and judiciary to promote workflow solutions, please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Ranjit Pawar and our next panel for legal technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Divya. A very good morning still for everyone. We're starting this panel a bit later than it was planned. So in interest of time, I'm not going to go through a lot of slides that I thought we would start off with. But nonetheless, I think it's important for me to set the context as to why this panel is being put up here, and also why Thomson Reuters is a name that you're now quite often seeing in various legal gatherings. So let me start with a very short introduction of Thomson Reuters, and then I'll jump into what's the agenda of this panel and what are the topics that we're going to be talking about. I think this happens at almost every conference. All of you here have heard about Thomson Reuters, and quite often when we start off a panel or a discussion, the question that comes to everybody's mind is, what is a news agency or a news media company like Thomson Reuters doing at a legal event? So it might surprise some of you, while a lot of you might be aware as well, that we are also one of the largest legal information and software providers globally. We are present in more than 70 countries, and we have a business of more than $3.5 billion, purely focused on legal products. And by legal products, I mean both information as well as software. So what do we exactly do when we say legal information and software? What we do is we try and understand in every space within the legal domain, how is it that we can help professionals? So whether it's a law firm or it's a corporate legal department, I think eventually we are dealing with lawyers. And for the lawyers, what happens in both of these areas is the change in their role. So if you're talking about a corporate legal department, I think it's a role of not only being an advisor to that organization, like we heard a lot of it in the earlier panel, but it's also about managing a lot of information, about reporting a lot of information, and of course, managing day-to-day tasks. So we try and see how we can help corporate legal departments. In the same way, we do that also for law firms. And I'm proud to say that in India, at least 3 out of the top 10 large law firms are today working entirely on Thomson Reuters platforms. So the billing, invoicing, or whether it's the knowledge management, or when it even comes to something like CRM, Thomson Reuters products are what are fueling these law firms in India as well. So although a new entrant in India, we hope to leave a large footprint here over a period of time. And that's the reason today Thomson Reuters has sort of brought together this panel to understand where is it that the Indian General Counsel sees technology helping them in their day-to-day life. And when I say technology, unfortunately this word, at least over the last 2 decades, has gotten associated purely with computers. And so the moment somebody says technology, the first thing that comes to mind is software. But technology, is it really just software? I think technology is anything, any tool or any science or knowledge that helps us to do our work more efficiently. I think if we had not discovered how to take temperatures of fire above a certain degree, we would not have moved from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age and to the Iron Age. These elements were always there in nature. We just learned how to smelt them in the furnaces. So technology to me is anything that helps us to add efficiency or to do things a different way. It's just that today we are using computers and mobiles instead of stone tools or copper tools or bronze tools. And so where is it that we can use the same computers, the same phones, and the same tablets that we are using to communicate largely? How can we use the same devices in a way that we can make our day-to-day legal work more efficient. So that's going to be, more or less the focus of this panel. And I'm very glad to be joined here by two very experienced general counsel. We have Shujat, who is the general counsel at International Paper. Shujat is also takes a lot of interest in technology. I see him speaking at a lot of forums, and also, he writes quite actively about technology for law. Besides that, I think he's also right now pursuing the cyber law and cyber forensics. So I think it's interesting to have, Shujat on the panel. And then we have Mr. Rajashri Chakrabarti, who's from the Times of India. Rajashri, again, has always been very active in the technology for law space, and he has been on various panels, spoken at various seminars. So I'm very glad to have two really strong panelists. We were expecting one more person to join us today, but unfortunately he's not been able to do that. He's Mr. Ashish Chandra from Snapdeal.com, and we were hoping that we would get a bit of e-commerce perspective also on the panel today. So what I would request the audience is to really fill up that third space, and for any of the questions that I'm going to put to the panelists, please feel free to talk about your own experiences or raise questions at any point. All right, thanks. So we'll proceed to the panel now. So let me start with the first question that comes to my mind, and this is for both of you. You can go for it in any order. What's the use of technology as you see in your day-to-day life as a legal manager? To be kind of acquired by talking to a lot of people around. So I agree with you that probably history is another.
Yeah, just to add a point, we have seen a lot of challenges wherein in terms there is a litigation like 10 years old or in some aspect, and organization doesn't have a proper records management policy nor a specific tool in terms of managing the record. And at that time, it becomes a huge challenge to actually defend any case. So I mean, to add to that, I'm sure some of the systems will address the records management issue as such.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe I would want to hear from you.
Sure. So I think document management is an integral part of litigation or matter management as we call it, and it is a reality that even in the largest of organizations today, we still see a lot of paper.
Yeah.
We still see the entire legal department sometimes looks literally like I mean they're just files and files and files of paper and documents. I think how do we move away from that to a more secure way of storing data in digital form? And I think there are many benefits to it. Just besides the fact that you don't want to deal with paper, I think the way in which you can search for information, the way in which you can analyze information once it is in digital form, I think it's extraordinary. I mean, to just give you some examples of what some of the technologies are capable of doing today is not only can you look at documents in PDF form and so read them more easily, etc. You can also search within documents which could be over say 10 or 20 years old, and you don't have to worry about where that information is lying, and you don't have to run around asking people for that information. The same way you can analyze a lot of information today which may be lying in those documents. For example, spreadsheets. I mean, today you can use those, upload those, and pull out a lot of analytics. To your point of how do you rate your counsel, your outside counsel, or the lawyers that you're using? I think these are the tools that will help you to really understand how much are you spending across law firms, how much are you spending across different litigation types, and that's the power of digitizing information first of all. So yes, I mean these are tools which are available today.
And I mean, again, I'll emphasize this, that this is not just creating a spreadsheet of information, not just some numbers. There has to be some analytics involved.
Qualitative as
well. What it is really showing you, that if I am paying a certain counsel X amount of money on a per appearance basis or per consultation basis, what has been the history over the last 2-year period? Am I just paying and things are not moving? Or in terms of performance? That is something which is very critical. The other thing on the document part of it, I think what will also help is essentially while we can retrieve documents, but sometimes what happens is, let's say the drafts undergo many changes, multiple changes, but we would want to go back to maybe the fourth draft and not necessarily take the last and final one. For whatever reason, we want to customize the fourth draft. So if we can do that easily, that's going to really help.
So I think there are systems which allow you today to manage versioning of documents, and that's particularly important in your kind of a domain as well as for law firms. I think it's incredibly important to have that. So yeah, we do today have tools which allow you to manage the versioning. So like you said, if you want to go to the third version or the fourth version after even the final versions being used, just to understand what was the flow, that's very much possible. Yeah.
Sure.
I just share the importance given to some of these aspects from a Companies Act standpoint. I mean, if you go through the new Companies Act, and I have seen the support from the board and the management towards the technology initiatives after the new Companies Act, simply for the reason that the Companies Act has allowed for video conferencing, it has allowed for digital minutes, it has allowed for digital statutory records as well, and more importantly, in the director's responsibility statement, it casted responsibility on the directors that they need to certify that compliance systems are adequately adequate and operative, and it's effective as well. In addition to the compliance, they talked about risk management frameworks, they talked about fraud control systems, internal financial control. All of these things have actually sensitized the board to be more attuned and more supportive and encouraging towards the technology, because only with these things I think they can they can get that comfort from the the CFO or the GC.
Yeah.
So I've seen that shift happening.
Yeah, I see a lot of that also in banks today.
Right.
Because statutory reports, I think filing those to RBI, for example, it's very difficult for a bank to really go back and understand how many cases were filed, how many consumer complaints were filed, what's the performance against that. I mean, how many of those have been disposed. I think a lot of that information even today banks continue to pull from branch offices and upwards, and there could be a lot of loss of data in that process. So yeah, to your point, I think that's a very important reason why people are probably shifting more towards using technology.
Yeah. And just to add to what Shujat said, Companies Act has been a big trigger. But in addition to that, what has also happened, and particularly true for companies with legacy issues. I mean, today a startup or let's say a small privately held company which has come up 10 years old, that may not have those kind of legacy issues. It's easier to manage the risk environment because as in-house legal counsel, what are you doing? You are essentially managing the risk, taking mitigating measures, containing the risk environment. But if you have a history dating back to, let's say, 30 years, 40 years, or even older than that, then you have serious concerns. And what I have seen in certain, at least in the Indian context, some of the very large, otherwise sophisticated companies in absolutely cutting edge technology sectors may not have been that diligent in terms of maintaining their documents, maintaining their workflows and processes. But these issues like Companies Act and let's say, and we can probably address that, the board becoming more vigilant, the audit committees becoming more vigilant, they have actually taken measures on war footing to ensure that processes and systems are put in place.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I think the regulated industries like pharma, telecom, insurance, you see traditionally their inclination towards the GRC platforms. But obviously, I mean, they don't cover the entire gamut of aspects, but very specific industry aspects.
Yeah, of course. We talked, let's just to shift the conversation a bit, we talked a lot about why technology is important and, a lot of good reasons for you to go for new software and, more advanced software, analytics, etc. But despite all of this, we still don't see, a lot of activity in the corporate legal space. I'll give you an example. E-billing, so electronic billing, is a very common trend if you see globally, especially in the Western world, in the developed markets. But in India, it hasn't still caught up as much. I mean, if I look at the benefits of e-billing, I sometimes find it difficult to understand why it's not being adopted in India. If you are going to be able to ask of your law firm to give you the bills over an electronic platform without sending you only paper invoices, and where you can specify what are the the heads, the cost heads, under which they can really file those expenses, besides the legal fees. And even in the legal fees, specify for what kind of work they are actually billing you. And all of this will be tied to a timekeeper sheet, which will be, in accordance with the rates that you have agreed with that law firm. I think if you look at what it delivers to the legal department, there's a lot of ease in terms of handling that financial information. Also being able to go back to your CFO with a lot more clarity on why a particular litigation or a particular contract has cost you as much. But I still don't see as much acceptance of that. Is it because in our market still the reasons for managing that cost are not as strong, or I don't know. I mean, I would probably like to hear from you, both of you.
I think a lot of focus would be, I mean, they tend to see this is more of a finance department's works, and they have their own billing systems, and a lot of those analysis is done.
SAP and whatever.
Yeah, and probably in the organizations wherein there is a tight control on the legal cost, wherein the GC is really responsible in terms of getting the cost down and doing a lot of analytics. Probably that GC would actually try to bind the system. I mean, and again, when we discuss about all the systems, I mean, I see this whole thing as a pyramid. Okay, the top on the pyramid is all these, the compliance, risk, litigation, and all of those things. Then come some of the litigation, draft, contract management, and all of those aspects. And probably in the bottom of the pyramid, you have all of those training related issues, and including the e-billing and all of those things. So probably the GC's focus would be to first address the top of the pyramid and probably come down. That's what I think. So.
Okay.
Just to add what Shujat was saying, I think in India again, like as you compare with US, like in US it's very common to have your per hour billing, whereas in India I think we're used with the system. Thank you. I thought I'm laudable. Okay, I think we have a fixed fee, system, unlike per hour billing. So I think that's the reason that e-billing is not so popular in Asia Pacific region, because I wouldn't want to give any lawyer on per hour basis, at least for APAC region, though I know it's not so popular in US and Europe.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a bit to that is, even in the West, if you see, the trend is now moving more and more towards fixed fee.
Yeah.
So if you see, even in the US, the largest of law firms are now being pushed to actually work with an estimate at the beginning and kind of treat it more like a project than necessarily a per hour, billing of consulting.
Yeah.
And even in that case, even in that scenario, the electronic billing can still be of great value, because one, law firms won't raise the entire bill, in one go. It's going to happen in phases as they deliver milestones to you. So as against milestones, what have they billed you? As against milestones, what kind of resources at the law firm are actually working on your project? I think a lot of that information is also of value, but I get your point that, probably because, yeah.
Just as an aside to ma'am's point, it's a kind of very funny situation, nothing to do with the technology discussions, but on the limited issue about the billing pattern. About 3 years ago, I was speaking at a seminar in LA, and the topic was alternate billing system or alternate billing methods. And all the lawyers on the panel were primarily US lawyers, and a couple of them were Australians. And I was the only one from the APAC region. And they were talking about how it is difficult, but market requires fixed fee and all of that. So when they came to me, I said, look, in India there is no, that is the billing system, that is the billing mechanism. We tend to go for fixed fee. But more to the point on why there is reluctance, I honestly don't know the answer why there is a reluctance, but I think what Shujat touched upon, the pyramid approach, it is something which is very low down in the General Counsel's priority list. It is seen as something which is more to do with finance function. And I don't know about your experience, but my personal experience is that lawyers, by and large, tend to shy away from anything to do with accounting, number, etc., etc. So it's just an added headache in their mind that, again, I have to do something, because I remember the first time when I was in private practice, one of my European clients asked one of their products to be implemented, Serengeti. For 2 days, we were just thinking what to do with this thing. Then we had an IT guy sit down with us and explain the entire process. Then we said, okay, this appears to be a good one. I guess there's a bit of mindset also which comes in. As lawyers, we feel that, oh gosh, we are used to that paper invoice and that's it. To move away from that has not happened for whatever reason.
So is there, just moving to another question, is there a lack of innovation or, lack of understanding of the local context that you see from software solution providers? Could that be a reason why, you don't probably see a solution that's still as much, tailored to your requirements?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen, if you really go through the, the overall pyramid right now, I think in India, we don't have one player who can actually, give the whole thing as an integrated solution. For example, for insider trading, if I need to sue, there is a separate player. For compliance, there is a separate player. And, I was talking about the whole training and evangelizing thing, whether it's ethics, code of conduct, or, competition, FCPA, and all of, there are all different tools. But if you see from GC perspective, all these things are interrelated. So one, you don't have a one full picture. We don't have something like a legal ERP, just like how the finance folks do get in SAP or an Oracle. That is something which is probably missing. And as we discussed earlier, the whole the intelligence and the analysis aspect and more towards the customization of the client, I think that is something which probably need to be understood. And I've seen the entry cost was pretty high, I think, a couple of years back. Now I think most of the players are moving towards the cloud. But I think that is making it a little bit easy, but at the same time, it's making a job of a GC tough to convince the CIO. So I think a lot of these aspects have to be addressed, when to embrace this technology from all these perspectives.
Sure. Rajarshi, do you have any views on the use of cloud to store legal information? I mean, we see a lot of apprehension even today in the minds of a lot of people that we end up speaking to in the market about cloud. I mean, it's almost seen as I'm storing all my files in someone else's locker, and why would I want to do that? Do you personally have any particular view on that topic?
Okay, my personal view would be that cloud has its benefits. There is no doubt about that. But having said this, I must also say that I'll not probably be in favor of storing everything on cloud. I'll be selective. I mean, it is not something like one jacket fits all kind of approach. You have to compartmentalize there what you need to put on cloud. I think the concerns are certainly there. Now, talking in a larger perspective, concerns are there in terms of what will happen to my confidentiality and so on and so forth. But I think the systems are, again, secure enough to ensure or to rather address those risks or concerns. But what is critical is that once you have stored something on cloud, and in case a situation arises where you need to kind of discontinue the relationship with the service provider and migrate your data to either another cloud or again back to your in-house setup. So those issues need to be ironed out very carefully and need to be looked through and thought through.
Sure. No, I agree with your approach that you can be selective instead of putting everything on the cloud. Probably most of your work can go there, but there will be certain areas which you would rather have on-premise. And I think that's where most of the technology providers are headed today, which is to give more of a hybrid solution where you can also have some on-premise storage and have a lot of it on the cloud instead.
And just to kind of give a live example, what we have seen in certain cases happen, and this is again true of litigation management softwares or IP management softwares, IP portfolio softwares, where everything is housed on cloud, at least the basic information database, and for reasons of operational efficiency, you give access to your external advisors and counsels to do some data input or do something on the cloud. But then we have also ensured that their access is limited to their domain, to their specific number of cases or the particular IP portfolio that they might be handling. You don't give an overarching kind of approach so that they have access to everything. So you need to be cautious.
I think that's where technology plays a great role in enabling these kind of customizations as to what maybe different requirements across different organizations. Moving to sort of a little away from tools and from the challenges of day-to-day tasks with the legal department. What's your experience with the advent of social media? I mean, it's, all your employees are probably on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, and, most people generally treat, at least Facebook as a very personal, channel of communication, or sort of reasserting their identity in the, outside their professional world. How are you sort of managing those risks associated with people either, talking about something that may damage the brand, or maybe sensitive information that you would rather, not have out there in front of millions of people? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. We have a media person here, so I mean, I collect, a couple of years back, when we used to do a risk assessment, obviously the media risk was the term. I think now the whole thing has more than the media risk. I think the key thing is social media risk. That is being talked more in the organizations, and we have seen the recent cases of the FMCGs and the food processing industries, the kind of attention it got, and I think most of the organizations these days, I mean, apart from the employees, I mean, I think probably we can broaden this discussion to the stakeholder community as such.
Yeah.
It need not be the employees, it could be your customers, it could be your vendors, it could be the society and stakeholders, and ultimately we serve all of them, and definitely we have a lot of risk in terms of social media. I mean, giving access to the employees to these things, that's just one subset. I mean, they can even have an access outside as well.
Yes.
Right. So obviously, this is definitely on the top, and I think more than the litigation and the compliance risk, I think reputation risk has taken a pretty top on the chart, and I have seen organizations being more focused on these aspects. They have a lot of cross-functional teams with legal, PR, and I've seen a lot of proactive approach wherein they have a PR manager in place, in-house and out-house as well, so that they can manage, including some social media specialists. So I've seen a lot of activity in this space. Giving access to the employees, I think obviously a lot of companies do have a social media policy. They do train and all of those things. I think that is something which is common. But more importantly, taking a proactive action of what's happening. I mean, just like you have a media tracker, I keep daily getting an email from our agency saying that, okay, what's the tracker in the media, social media, wherein the organization's name has been reflected and all. I mean, I think these are the activities which I've seen increase. More focus on reputation management, including having crisis management teams, in place, including putting some of those processes in place. I mean, clearly the Nestle case. I mean, I was speaking to one of my colleagues. I mean, there is a lot of talk that the response was pretty slow. I mean, they didn't actually assert this. I don't want to get into that, but there's been a lot of articles around that. I mean, it could have been managed better.
Right.
So yeah. So I can definitely hear from him.
Yeah, I mean, one is the employees, and I also agree that you cannot really restrict access in today's world, because mobile devices are really beyond even the organization's control at times. But what do you think? What has been your experience with functions like, let's say, marketing? Are they coming to you as diligently as they should when communications, especially, are being crafted for the social media?
That's a tricky one, because are they coming enough? I would probably want them to come a little more, but that's something which has to be expected. But yes, we have in the recent past, or when I say recent, maybe let's say 2-year horizon, I would say, we have dealt with several such issues, be it communication through your Twitter handles, be it through WhatsApp communication, or for that matter, there was one issue where there was a competition which was being held, and people as in readers of newspapers, they were asked to send in their short stories through WhatsApp to a particular number. Now this is something which is, as it is interesting, it is also challenging, because these are issues where we have not really had any past experience, or there is no legal precedent to go by, really speaking. Because there are multiple issues involved here. One must understand that. You have, the biggest thing for a media house is freedom of speech and expression, and that is sacrosanct for us and as well for all the citizens. So while that is the overarching principle, then you have issues relating to confidentiality, issues relating to privacy, issues relating to IPR, issues relating to obscenity, issues relating to defamation. So these are multiple issues which are involved. So obviously as an organization, and I guess it is true for all other organizations as well, you need to have certain systems and processes in place to manage
Yes.
what you communicate, how you manage your online reputation, and how effectively you, I won't say oversee or control what your employees put out, but how you effectively contain a scenario where things go out of hand. So one of the things that it's very critical in my mind is that you sensitize your staff about certain key things that, you know, while we are on the digital platform, we are in the e-world and all of that, but certain, those old-fashioned offline laws still hold good. Laws relating to confidentiality. You can't breach certain obligations. You can't violate somebody else's IPR. You can't put up something which is defamatory. So these kind of things have to be, thought through. And like you mentioned, the marketing team. Now today it is very easy to send out a marketing blitz through the social media, but unwittingly you might be disparaging somebody else's goods and services. Now that is something which is clearly a no-no.
Yeah.
Because where it is happening at the level within the organizational hierarchy, somebody very creative has come up with a bright idea. He or she puts it up, but then it has the effect of disparaging somebody else's mark, somebody else's
Or
product.
even the sensitivity
Or
of
the
certain
sensitivity.
topics.
And in our case, what is a little larger issue is also about the communities. You can't be hurting the sentiments of any particular community because that has legal repercussions. So these are larger issues that you need to kind of address. And just to add on to one point that Sujat said about the incident relating to this particular instant noodle product. Now, you know, this is something which is very critical now, because while it is internal, you can control, but externally, what is your policy in terms of managing your brand reputation online? And in fact, this happened several years ago, actually, I guess 2009. I mean, had it happened today, I don't know what would have been the result. If you go to YouTube and check for one particular video, and it's called United Breaks Guitars. Now, this is a song by a Canadian guy. His guitar was damaged or broken by United Airlines. He went to the United Airlines website, lodged complaint, nothing happened. So in protest, what he did was he created a song, wrote a song and sung that and put it up on YouTube, United Breaks Guitars. As of today, I checked this morning, it had 15 million hits on YouTube. Now, just imagine today, it is so easy in one moment to attack your brand. So what strategy do you have? That is very critical.
Do you see, in fact, a social media behavior becoming part of the code of conduct at some point?
I think so, and a lot of organizations do, include that aspect in the in electronic communication, including social media, and that is something which definitely is there, and including a separate social media policy. I was just, trying to recollect an example. One of the HR initiative, wherein what they said was, there is a LinkedIn post, and they encouraged the employees to, forward that LinkedIn contacts. So there could be a scenario wherein actually, we would be termed as soliciting. So I said, you need to be very careful as to which email IDs you are sending. Let's say, the Infosys guy is sending to Cognizant, and let's say if they have some non-soliciting agreement, it actually violates. So a lot of the creative elements can actually get into a violation of some other laws as well. So I see lawyers spending more time on these issues going forward, whether it's social media, data privacy, confidentiality. I see definitely a lot of issues going forward. Obviously, as there are benefits from the technology standpoint, there are issues which will come out of the technology as well.
Just one question, I think we're running short of time, but just one question before we go to the audience. In terms of brand management and online assets, related to your brand, are there any particular solutions, technologies that you're seeing in the market? To give you an example, there's a large, motor vehicle manufacturer in India, and who are using one of our brand protection solutions. And what we noticed is that in another country, someone was using their brand to actually sell bicycles, and those were being sold under that particular brand, and obviously people were accepting or rather purchasing those products looking at the brand which it is in India. So do you see already a lot of legal teams or even your brand management teams using brand protection tools?
No, I definitely don't see any such use of brand production tools as such. Though I mean, we use the professionals and agencies as such who would actually cater those needs, but not
especially your websites. I think and especially if you are in the e-commerce space, I think it plays an even bigger role.
Yeah, we have this whole virtual world. Apart from this physical world, there is a complete virtual world which is there, and I'm sure.
Yeah, and you want to protect your brand even there. Great. Rashi, any last comments from either of you before we?
I think overall, definitely the technology would help in terms of decision making, to the management, and in terms of efficiency and cost. So there are a lot of benefits as such, because as the general counsels, we need to advocate the use of technology. Obviously, there would be cost element, but once we can show the return of investment in terms of saving of notional cost, obviously, I mean, the CEO or the board will say, okay, there's a huge cost. If we can show some savings, or in terms of notional savings, that okay, we have avoided this risk, we have avoided this litigation, and if we can be more creative in terms of metrics, I think we can get ROI in a couple of years.
Sure.
I'll just add two things, and I guess that's just to sum up. In terms of benefit, one is, I would put it this way, that use of technology would have two benefits. One is a hard benefit, meaning how much money you have saved, you have cut down on your costs, you have managed your documents better, etc., etc. The other one is the softer benefits, which are mostly people related, people issues. And I guess with technology, what will happen over a period of time is that the level of efficiency grows, and therefore the happiness quotient within the team also would grow. I think that is the ultimate end objective. And on the other side, in terms of growth of technology and application of technology in Indian legal teams or Indian in-house teams, I would say that there is still some miles to go. I mean, you guys have been doing a phenomenal job in terms of bringing these products and tools, but I guess there is an issue about some mindset in certain sectors. It is a bit still in the old school thought that this is a system which has been going on for last so many years, so why change it?
Yeah.
So I guess that's where you need, because this relates to the point that you said, that why is Serengeti not popular, or some of these tools not that popular? It is not always about cost also. It is how you project your benefit to your customers. So is the customer really appreciating that beyond cost of a few $1,000s, what is he getting overall? So if that can be understood, that will help.
Sure. Thanks, Rajarshi and Shrujat. Any questions from the audience, before we close the session? I think we have probably a few minutes still to go. Okay, so I would just say it's good to see that our discussions are moving away from whether we should have technology or not. I don't think it's a debate. It's probably more of choices that we are talking about now. So thanks for a great conversation, Rajarshi and Shrujat, and thanks for being a great audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.